So I was walking through my local bookstore the other day and I stumbled across a sale in the manga section. The entire manga section was having a buy 3 get the 4th free sale, and I decided to take advantage as there were a few books I was looking to buy, so may as well get some of them for free if I could. Among the large assortment of popular shonen titles, I noticed the first 8 volumes of Slam Dunk just sitting there, with nobody taking them. Like many of you, I've heard of Slam Dunk before. It's one of the most popular sports manga out there and one of the biggest manga out in Japan. I also know the series is pretty hard to collect as reprints only come so often. I never read or watched a sports series before, so I decided to take them and then begin my journey. And boy was I glad I did. It's 2023 and I'm reading Slam Dunk for the first time. So let's talk about it. For those of you who don't know, Slam Dunk is a series by Takehiko Inoue. Most of you may know him as the author of Vagabond, one of the biggest seinen series of all time, which I have also not read yet, but may do so given how interesting Slam Dunk has been for me so far. If it wasn't obvious enough based on the title, Slam Dunk is about basketball. It follows our main character Hanamichi Sakuragi, a first year in high school who's a delinquent. He gets into fights easily and is quite quick to anger. The first chapter starts with Hanamichi getting rejected and all of his friends laughing at him. We get a few flashbacks of different girls saying they only like boys on the basketball team, and this gets Hanamichi quite upset. Down in the dumps, he's moping around school and gets approached by Haruko, who asks him if he likes basketball. Blinded by love, he states that he loves basketball, and so our story begins. With this first chapter, we get a good idea of who Sakuragi is. He's rash, aggressive, and quick to act on impulse, especially when it comes to love, or his idea of love, let's call it. He meets Haruko and is immediately taken back, saying things he doesn't even believe or understand. This is a large character trait of Sakuragi's, as he's quick to act on something without thinking it through, and this is something we'll be seeing come into fruition more as the series goes on. With him starting a lie discussing his love for basketball, this gets him in the situation where he actually ends up joining the basketball team. Never having played the sport, Sakuragi doesn't know what he's gotten himself into. The lie he tells is what ends up being his downfall, as Sakuragi does not know a thing about basketball, from the rules to the general handling of the ball or anything. Slam Dunk is the story of an underdog, but rather than have a situation where the underdog is some form of weakling or outlier, our MC here is pretty capable, but he doesn't have the ability to use his capability to the fullest, at least not in this first part of the story. On top of this extremely impulsive behavior, we also get to see that Sakuragi is quite quick to anger. He quickly gets upset at the slightest of insults, this being shown by the countless times he beats up his friends or yells at his teammates. He also has a large ego, usually referring to himself as the greatest player in Shohoku High School or a genius at basketball. Now I can see how this can prove to be annoying for some people, as most would not consider it an impulsive, loud attitude as something that makes a character good, but it's the way in which Sakuragi uses this rashness to his advantage in the game. In a weird way, this aggressive attitude actually makes him likable compared to other aggressive MCs that we know. It's at this point where I want to talk about the other characters in the story. Aside from Sakuragi, we have 3 main characters of interest I'd like to discuss. First, there's Haruko, the main love interest of the story. Now, my relationship with Haruko's character is a bit complicated, as I don't necessarily like the character trope of a fangirl side character, but I understand where this is needed in the story. Her fangirling about basketball and another character is literally what drives our main character to do what he does. It's the main motivation for Sakuragi, and I can understand how there is potential for her to grow as a character in the future, as I'm only 1/4 of the way in. But for now, I think she's just okay. The next character I want to discuss is Akagi, Haruko's brother and the team captain. He's a large brute of a man who has led the basketball team, and he is also another motivator for Sakuragi in a way. His main comedic shtick is that everybody calls him a gorilla due to his large gorilla-like stature, as well as the signature move he has, literally called the Gorilla Dunk. His name even ends up being changed constantly from Akagi to Gori, mainly by Sakuragi. Akagi is an interesting character because he provides the role of sensei in a way for some of our younger players. Even though there's a lot of comedy relating to him and his controlling nature, it doesn't take away from the great respect his team has for him, and even Sakuragi ends up listening to him as the story progresses. He is yet another source for Sakuragi's ego, as Sakuragi was able to beat him in a quick competition, so Akagi's never able to live it down throughout the series. I'm very interested to see where this character goes from here. Finally, I want to take some time to talk about Urukawa. Urukawa is a good-looking teammate who has both a lot of skill when it comes to basketball as well as a lot of girls fawn over him, including Haruko. While Haruko is Sakuragi's main love interest, Urukawa is currently Haruko's love interest. This creates a rivalry between Sakuragi and Urukawa, one that is somewhat one-sided given Urukawa doesn't really care about Sakuragi's emotions or actions. He calls him an idiot most of the time, but what makes this a little bit different from other rivalries we've seen in shonen series is that Urukawa ends up helping Sakuragi a lot, especially in moments where Sakuragi is shown to be struggling with different things, primarily basketball related. There are a few other characters I'm interested in, like the coach, manager, and vice captain, but I'll wait for a few arcs to pass as I feel as there's more to explore there and we've only gotten a taste so far in these first few volumes. And that brings me to my next point for this video. Slam Dunk's main differentiator compared to other series for me is the sense of teamwork you see throughout the story. I know this is a sports series so it's quite obvious, but them all being a part of the same team shows that at the end of the day, they work together and are there for each other, even though some of them are quite ridiculous and different. Akagi beats up Sakuragi and the other teammates because he cares about them and wants to see them do their best no matter what. Even though Urukawa talks down to Sakuragi most of the time, he's also there to help, as without everyone working as one unit, they won't be able to proceed as a team. This is shown beautifully in the first big game of the series. The team is not showing too much togetherness or teamwork, and this is causing them to be down throughout most of the game. Sakuragi even ends up playing for a bit, and he is as aggressive and clueless as ever, causing him to embarrass himself not only in front of his team, but the opposing team as well. There is then a large change with the team morale as the game goes on, and Sakuragi and Rukawa end up working together, causing them to close the gap between them. Ultimately, they end up losing the game, and this causes Sakuragi to get quite upset as he's not a fan of losing at all, as is constantly showcased by his group of friends throughout the story. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the art and paneling of the story. So Slam Dunk is a story from the 90s, so there is a lot of that 90s comedic charm throughout, especially with the faces Sakuragi and other team members make throughout the story. It reminded me a lot of Yu Yu Hakusho, which came out around the same time. That's not to say there isn't good artwork in Slam Dunk, as some panels are absolutely stunning, with detailed character designs and action shots. Inoue is great at showcasing movement in his panels, which is very important in a series that's meant to showcase sports and the movement characters need to have when playing basketball. The panels have a fluidity to them, and this allows the reader to feel the speed and movement these characters are showcasing. I also want to talk about some ways in which Inoue has been able to master the paneling for quote-unquote hype moments. Now, I've read a lot of manga, especially shonen, and I have to say I have not gotten this hyped up flipping the page or looking at a panel as I have with Slam Dunk. Looking at the ball going into the basket is extremely rewarding, like watching a character nail the perfect move in a typical battle shonen. If this is what other sports series are like, then sign me up. All in all, Slam Dunk has been an absolute joy to read so far. The art is beautiful, the paneling is top notch, and the cast of characters are shaping up to be some of my favorites in manga. The story seems to be going to a very interesting point as well. I've currently finished volume 8 and haven't mentioned anything in the next little part of the story, as this looks to be the start of another major arc. I'm thinking of having this become a series of videos where I showcase my journey with the series, likely being split to around 4 parts. If you like what you've seen so far, do make sure to like and subscribe so you can join me on this journey. Thank you.